All right, so I'm going to go to my computer, I'm going to go to my P drive, and I'm going to delete the 2016 folder. Okay, so every day you come in, we delete the 2016 folder. And then I'm going to go to my folder here. I'm going to go to my 2510. I'm going to go copy my 2016 folder and paste it right onto the P drive. Okay? That way I have my preferences. And again, when we open up Maya, we should see our shelf that we created with our name on it. All right? Now all of these things too they're already in the lecture. So in case like, oh, your shelf isn't working or whatever else, you can always jump back to that first lecture we did with the interface and go through it and recreate your shelf or re-see how to do all the stuff that we've been doing. So don't think that those lectures are, I'm done with the desk and never need to look at it again. You may remember a concept we did on the desk and want to jump back and review it. My biggest thing is repetition. So the more you can repeat what we're doing, the more these things are going to sink in, the quicker we're going to be able to create them. On some of the other stuff that we'll do in class, some of the things might take you, like for one specific item, that one item might take you 3 hours to do, but then the second time you create that item, it might only be like an hour and a half, and then the third time might be a half hour, then the fourth time might be like 20 minutes. So your speed will greatly increase the more you do this stuff, okay? So I encourage the more repetition, the better. All right, so now that we are in Maya, my mouse so short. Now that we're in Maya, I'm going to go to File and I'm going to say Set Project. So you remember last class we made a project. We made the mini room project. So what we have to do is go to File, Set Project, and now tell Maya what it is we're working on. Okay? So just like copying our stuff into our preferences into that folder, every day we're going to set our project. Okay? So when you come into Maya, we don't just open, we go to File, Set Project, and then we find our project folder. So for this class, I go to the mini room. I don't need to go into the mini room folder. I click right on the mini room name, and then I hit Set. Okay, now once I've told it what project I'm working on, then I can go to File, Open, and alakazam, do you see where it's taken me? Which folder it's taken me to? Scenes. It automatically brings me right into the scenes folder of that project I'm working on. So that way I know this is the right way. I've set my project and I'm in that right folder. And then I can open up that folder or open up that file. If this is a room that we're decorating and we want the walls to look like wallpapered walls, we may go onto the internet, find a picture of wallpaper and put it into our source images folder and then project it or put it onto the wall so it looks like wallpaper. Then we may want this to look like wood. So we go out and find a picture of wood, put it into our source images folder, and then make it look like wood inside the software. Okay, so this isn't like we just stay in Maya the whole time. We always have to go out and grab stuff and then use it to make things look better. So just as an example, this is something I worked on over the weekend. Right there. So this is ZBrush, and ZBrush allows me to model organically. So if I wanted to make, clicked on him, yes. If I wanted to paint a texture on him, I make sure I click the right buttons, turn off those buttons. And then I can find a picture of jelly beans. I don't know why there's jelly beans, but there we go. See, so now he has jelly beans in his stomach. Now in order for us to get those jelly beans into Maya, they have to be in the right spot, okay? So in ZBrush, it works a little bit differently, where it's actually importing that file and attaching it right to the stomach. In Maya, it doesn't. It links it. Okay, so we have to keep this folder organized. So every time we come into Maya, we have to set our project telling it which folder we're working in, so it knows if you're working on the mini room, all your source images should be in this source image folder. All your scenes are in this folder. All your images are in this folder. And if we don't, if we just went to open and grabbed a random file, it's not going to link things correctly. Okay, you'll see that. Hopefully, you don't see that because that means you messed up. All right. So what we want to do today is we want to finish up the desk. So the desk looks okay. If we look at it, you can see it looks fine. But if you remember from some of the stuff that we already looked at online, like the Tin Toy commercial or the Tin Toy cartoon, everything was very blocky. Everything was very just kind of really low resolution, poor quality. We want to jazz this up a little bit. And one of the ways we can jazz things up is by adding what's called a bevel. Okay, so if you look at typically any surface close enough, you'll see that there's no like hard corner. There's usually this like little taper that happens, this little rounding that happens on it. So if you think about like a piece of wood or a piece of plastic, there's typically not a hard edge. Even if it looks like it, you get close enough, you'll see that there is a rounding that happens. So all of these things have a very, very hard edge all over the place. Okay, so watch how I do it here, and then we'll do it together. Because I want to show the wrong way to do it, and I want to show the right way to do it. So I'm just going to duplicate this so I have a copy of it so you can see it. So the way that we add a bevel to this is we go to Edit Mesh, and we could add a bevel. Okay, now the problem with just doing it like that is that it adds a bevel all over the place. So all of these spots here, it added a bevel. All the spots that we maybe didn't need it to add a bevel, it added a bevel. Okay. Oops. So like stuff like this, if I go to this edge right here, we don't need this edge to have a bevel because there's no corner there. We only need it to add a bevel where there's an actual corner. Now that might seem like a minuscule thing, but the more divisions we have, the longer it's going to take to render out, the longer it's going to take to work with. I had a student earlier who tried to open up their file, and it had, just so you can see for comparison, display heads up, poly count. All right, this specific item has 96 vertices on it. Okay, so 96 vertices translates to 188 triangles, which is basically what the computer is using to calculate. He had 366,000 vertices, which translates into over 1 million polygons, which to Maya brings it to a screeching halt. So he couldn't even open his file or turn the thing because it was just going so slow. So we had to work on some other stuff to get it to work correctly. So we don't want to have a whole lot of polygons in our scene. We don't want to have a whole bunch of divisions where we don't need them. So like even this division going down this loop here, we could eliminate because it's not necessary. This division isn't doing anything. Okay. If we wanted to delete this division, we can highlight it just by double clicking. And if I hit the backspace, you can see that it did remove the edge. But if I right click and go to vertex, you can see that the vertices are still there. All right. So the delete button on itself is not the way to delete stuff. We use Control Delete, and that cleanly deletes it without leaving any vertices there. A couple people last time deleted some stuff, and there were just these hanging vertices, and it kind of brought everything to a halt because other tools stopped working. Okay, we try to model everything as close as we can to having quads only, 4-sided all the way around, right? So I'm going to go through and delete these. I don't need to delete them, but I'm just going to. So I Control Delete those. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to select only the edges that have a corner, and that's what I want to add my bevel. So here's the slow way to do this, is I shift click all the way around here. I come inside, I shift click all these pieces. Do you see how long this is taking me already? This is like crazy. So as I shift click all of these pieces here, this is taking forever. And this isn't even doing the outside, this is just doing the inside. As in, it's not doing like this area. Okay, so that's obviously not the way I want to do this. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edge, and I'm going to marquee all the edges. Okay, and then I'm going to tell Maya I want you to go through and find all the corners, and then select just the corners. Okay. So if we looked at a corner, how many degrees is a corner? 90, right? So if I go under this Select tool here, and I go to, where are you at? Components. Constraints, there it is. Select Use Constraints. I can tell Maya that I want to use this tool for the current selection. And under Geometry, I can say I want to activate. So any degree between 80 and 120, select. So now if we look at this, you can see that it only selected the edges where there was a corner. Okay? Now I did 80 and 120 because we have to give it a range, and there wasn't anything that was kind of iffy. There's nothing that's at 80 or 120. It's just going to grab the stuff that's at 90. If it was grabbing other stuff, I could have gone 89 to 91. There we go. And that would have worked too the same way. I'm getting the same results. Okay? So what this tool does is it actually limits what we can select. So right now, if I were to marquee, you can see it's only selecting edges that meet this qualification. So it's only selecting 90-degree angles, which is wonderful. So I'm going to just say close and reset. I can go to my edit mesh now, and now I can go to bevel. And now I've beveled just the edges that I need. Okay? So it's kind of a neat way to do that. Now the other thing here is if we look at this pop-up came here. Okay, this is kind of like the extrude. When we extruded stuff, we got a little pop-up. So in here I can control the fraction of how far away it is. I can also control the segments. So depending on the kind of surface, I may have it be more round or less round, a little bit tighter or a little bit shallower. So because this is kind of like a new age kind of plasticky, I'm going to go with a little bit something a little bit tighter. So maybe like 3 divisions is good, and I'm going to lower that fraction to about 0.2. Okay, so it looks manufactured. It looks like something like this, where maybe wood would actually have like a nice little bevel rounding on the end of it. Okay, eventually you'll get to the point where it's kind of like matrix style. You walk around your house and you're like breaking apart everything in your house. Like, how would I make a faucet? How do I make a sink? How do I make this? What kind of bevel's on here? Eventually you'll get to that. Okay, so that here is how I did that. So I'm going to do it again on here, and then we'll do it together. So I'm going to go to edges. I marquee all the stuff. I use my select constraints for the current and next selection. I go to geometry. I go to angle. My numbers are still already locked in, so I can just hit activate, and then I can reset it. Okay, and then I just go to edit mesh. I go to bevel again, and I'll add another division, and I can play with that fraction. Now you'll see it's only going to go so far because this fraction is also adjusting stuff in here. So that looks pretty good right about there. Okay, so back to object mode, click, click, and that is done. So now I have a nice little bevel, and you can see the surface. If you look at this one here on the bottom, you can see how we have this little break right there where it's a little bit of rounding right at the end, and it looks 10 times better than this one that has nothing. That one up there looks really boring and really flat. Having that little bevel in there really adds to the shape of it. It really adds to the realism of it because pretty much everything in the real world has that kind of rounding. Okay, so let's do one of these together, and then you can just do the other one as I walk around. Okay, so what's the first step we do? Dun, dun, dun. So we go to the select menu, then we go to constraints, use constraints. Okay, so select use constraints, and then the top button here, what this does is it says for what I have selected, because you can set it to all, like everything that I select from now on, I only want to grab 90-degree angles, and it'll do that. So we just click the current and next. Then under the geometry tab, we open up angle, and we set this to 91 first, and then 89, and then we activate. This could be if you hit close and remember, it could be a neat thing to do. Like there are other ones inside here, like random. I'll use this one if I just want to grab a bunch of random faces and extrude them. I'll use that. So I just marquee a bunch of random faces, extrude them. Marquee again, a bunch of random faces, extrude them. So sometimes I will hit this as a close and remember, but for something like this, we don't need it. Okay, so I just hit close and reset. And then under Edit Mesh, we go to Bevel, or Bevel. And then we just adjust our settings here. My settings are 0.2 fraction and 2 on the segments, but you could adjust yours accordingly. Again, more divisions, the longer it's going to take to render and to work with. So we don't want to have 600 divisions. 2 divisions is typically good for something like this. And looking at how close we would get to the object would also control that too. If we're right up on top of this desk and we're really seeing that edge, we may need more divisions to keep a nice round shape. If we're going to be back like this, 2 divisions is perfect, okay? But if we're, let's say this is Toy Story and we have a scene where the character is running right along this no longer looks square, or it looks round. It looks square now because we're not real close. So if that were the case, we could add more divisions to help round that shape off, okay? For what we're doing, we're not going to be that close. So I'm going to just go with 3. Okay, so once you have that, then you grab the desk and you do the same exact thing. You go to Edges, you marquee it, you go to the Use Constraints, set the angle, add a bevel. All right, so a couple issues that popped up, and in a way I like these because they're good teaching moments. Another way, I wish it was easier and we didn't have these issues, but it's a fact that we just do. So just a couple things that we need to pay attention to as we're building stuff. So here's a cube, right? And if I hit 3 on the cube, this cube shows me a smoothed out version of the cube, which ends up being a sphere. All right, so typically my troubleshooting for anything that might be a problem is I switch between 1 and 3 to see if there's anything funky going on. In this case, it's perfect. But let's say I grabbed a face and I go to extrude the face, right there, and then I never actually moved that face. Okay, I extruded it, but I never moved it. So right now there's faces on top of faces. If I hit 3 now, do you see how this shape looks completely different than what we just saw? Okay, even though here it looks exactly the same, this looks different. Now if I were to try to go and do a bevel on this, the bevel is not going to work because it doesn't know how to do a bevel on these faces that are on top of each other. So it just says, forget you, I'm not going to do anything. So one way we can correct this is I use Edit Mesh and I use Merge. And what this will do is it goes through and searches this distance. So if another vertice, another one of these points, is within that distance, it just merges it together, okay? So I set this number to the lowest possible number I can set it to, 0.001, okay? And then what this is going to do is that if I hit 3 now, you'll see that now it went back to that circle shape, that sphere shape. So I could go back in and make this a bevel, and then it would be happy, okay? So that's stuff that we have to pay attention to because it's very, very, very easy to think that you're doing the right thing. For instance, I grab this, and I go to extrude, and let's say I click on this face and I pull it out. Okay, so I've extruded this, so that looks pretty good. So now if I go to bevel, you'll see that bevel is not going to work again. Okay, now the reason it's not going to work again, I'm going to troubleshoot this. I'm going to hit 3, and I'm going to look around and say, whoa, why is this side looks nice and smooth, but this side doesn't? What happened was, and I kind of did this on purpose, I actually did do it on purpose, is I selected this face too. So this face actually has like a hidden face in it. You rewind, there we go. So when I marqueed this face to select it to extrude, I accidentally marqueed this face too. So you have to be careful that you grab only what you want to actually extrude, especially when we get into more of these deep, deep, deep surfaces that have faces all over the place. It's very easy to kind of mess up that kind of stuff. The other thing that came up, let's put a bevel on this. Oops. I'm going to undo all my extrudes on this first. There we go. And then I'll put my bevel on it. All right, so right now, let's say I wanted to go back and put a bevel on this. So I marquee it all. I go back to my constraints. I punch in my angle here, current and next, and you'll see that nothing selects, okay? So what's happening in this case? You don't get to answer. What's happening in this case?
The angle is not
Right. None of these angles are between 89 and 91. Okay. So that's why I can't select any of these, because they're not there. So I'd have to maybe expand this range, 40 and maybe 120. Marquee again. There we go. So now I selected more of them. And so now I could put a bevel on that if I wanted to. Or I could just reset it and be able to grab all the edges. Okay. So we have to be very cautious about how we do certain things inside Maya. Like the way I'm doing this is pointless because I grabbed all of them. The other thing we have to be careful of is when we do our bevel, let's say we grab this edge and we bevel it, and I shrink this down, and then I'm like, ooh, I forgot to grab this edge too. And I click on that and I go to bevel. You can see that this bevel is now smaller than the other bevel. Even if I play with these settings, it's not going to turn out right, because now I don't have the right flow happening from edge to edge. If we look at these three, see this nice flow that's happening from one to the other? That's what we want to have all the way around this thing. Okay? So when we do bevels, we have to make sure we grab all the appropriate edges and then add our bevel to it, and then we'll get some pretty neat results. Okay? And if we mess up, then we just hit undo until it goes away, and I verify it's gone away by looking over here and making sure that that bevel is gone. There we go. So now it's back to being here. Okay? So just be cautious about that. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to review some of the stuff that we've covered so far. I'm going to create a cube real quick. All right, our first tool that we played with was the extrude. So by grabbing any face, not edge, not vertice, any face, we can go to edit mesh and extrude. There he is. And we can pull that edge out. Okay, just using that blue arrow, that's the only arrow we typically click on, pull the blue arrow out, it'll pull out that edge or that face. I could also come over here and play with stuff like the offset. So if I wanted to taper this, I could still taper it and pull it in. Okay. I could also play with the thickness, and that'll do essentially, in this case, it's doing the same thing as the blue arrow, but it doesn't do that in all cases. Okay. So I bevel, or I extrude, pull it out. I can adjust the offset. I can also grab multiple ones, so like one on each side, extrude, pull them both out using the blue arrow, and then still adjust the offset. And you can see how I'm keeping this now symmetrical, so I don't have like one side, in this case, one side is extremely shorter and tinier than the other side, which is obviously a lot bigger. Okay, so that was our first tool that we really played with, was that extruding tool. We also have the insert edge loop tool. So under mesh tools, insert edge loop, and this allows us to click and drag where we want another edge loop to go. So far, in order for us to grab a section and extrude it, we need to have that section isolated. Okay? So if I was modeling a character, I need to isolate where the nose is at, and then I can extrude the nose out, or isolate where the eye is at and extrude the eyes in, or the mouth in, or grab the neck and extrude the neck down. So this is one of those tools that allows us to add divisions. And you can see as I add divisions in here, it gives me more ability to go through and start to define what this shape is looking like. I have no idea what I'm building. I'm just making stuff. Okay? We're building a rocket ship. There we go. So right here, this is where the window is going to be. So I'm going to go and extrude this. I'm going to take the offset down. There we go. I'm going to pull it in a little bit. Oops. I'm going to extrude it again. A little bit of an offset. There we go. I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to grab this vertice and pull this up. I'm also going to grab these two, and this one, and that one. Pull that like that. There we go. Now I hit 3. Look at that. It looks like a bubble window. Pretty cool. All right. So that's the insert edge loop tool. Now a quick way to add divisions is that insert edge loop tool. But there's other stuff inside the option box. Remember that the little box on the far right is options. So it's other stuff that we could set. So one of those things we can set is multiple edge loops. So I click on this, I can set a number here, and all I have to do is click, and it'll add 4 divisions, 1, 2, 3, 4, right there, okay? That way, if I am adding something on one side and the other side, I can keep it all symmetrical, okay? So it's a very, very quick way to be able to do something like that. Now, the Insert Edge Loop tool works pretty good because it allows us to insert edge loops like that, but sometimes it's not going to let us. So if I go here, here's my cube. So let's say I inserted an edge loop right here, come on, and right there, and then I realized I don't need this one. So I double click it, and I do the wrong thing, which is just hitting backspace, okay? So remember when I hit backspace that it doesn't delete the vertices. So now watch what happens when I try to use the Insert Edge Loop tool. It's not going all the way around. It's not even making anything here. Okay? And the reason for this is because it doesn't know where to go. When we have a perfect quad, a perfect square shape, it's obvious where the next edge should go. But because this one has these vertices just hanging out, it doesn't know what to do. So I'm going to delete those vertices. I'm going to go to the edge tool and just delete, or the edge selection, just control delete those. And now my Insert Edge Loop tool will work perfectly. Okay, so you can see how very quickly I can just clean that up and then start adding other edge divisions in here. Now let's say we accidentally deleted one edge from here. Okay, and these two are not connected. My Edge Loop tool is not going to, it'll go this way, but it's not going to go, liar. It shouldn't be going that way, but it's doing that, which is kind of weird. All right, let me delete that one too. There we go. So it stopped working, okay? So instead of me going through and trying to delete stuff and whatever, I can use a different tool. So the Insert Edge Loop is automatic, loops all the way around. The other tool is Multi-Cut. And this is basically drawing in the exact shape that we want. So under Multi-Cut, we can just click and say I want to connect this edge to this vertice that's hidden here, to this edge right there. And I can draw in my own shape. So there are some times where we'll actually go through and we may draw a specific shape that we want to cut out, and then we can grab our edges or our face and extrude that face inward. Okay? Or we can use the Multi-Cut tool. Oops. Multi-Cut tool. Now I typically don't use it like this. I'm just showing you as an example of how we could use it. Okay? More defined shape right here, and I could use that as an extrusion right under here. I'll do a little offset first. There we go. Extrude it again, push it in. And now we have something that might resemble like an eye and a character. Okay? Now this is very messy. We don't have quads all over the place, so that's going to drive me crazy. It's going to drive Maya crazy. But it is possible to do that with the mesh tool. As you work, your goal is to make sure that you have quads as best you can. So that's the Insert Edge Loop tool. That's the Multi-Cut. Yes, sir?
What's a quad?
A quad is 4-sided. So here, 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. That's what our goal is, to have 4 sides on every single one of these faces. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, typically you'll find when you don't have a quad that it's something looks off. Now, how many edges does this face right here have? They can't have one. This face? How many edges make that face up? 5, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So even though it's rectangle, it's not an actual quad, it's still 5 sides. Why? Because if I go to 3 and I smooth this out, do you see how we get a little pinch right here? Where these other areas it's nice and smooth. So how Maya interpolates this 5-sided one into the rest of it, it doesn't like. So if I went through the Multi-Cut, there it is. If I went through Multi-Cut and I just drew this around to here, oops, I go up first. And 5 is typically not a huge deal, But some programs like ZBrush, you can't even bring a 3-sided in there. It doesn't like that at all. So now that looks a little bit cleaner as far as what Maya's doing inside there. Plus, also the mesh tool insert edge loops would now work. Nope, not there because I have a triangle. See, this one is 3-sided, so I'd have to fix that also. But right here, I could insert edge loops there, insert edge loops here, or there, or there. This is a new feature. It's never connected stuff like that before. That's just something new that the software is doing. Okay, so eventually we'll get to the point of needing quads and needing not having triangles or 5-sided in order for our surface to look decent. If you look at any models that you browse online, that's a lot of these. You can see that every single one of these faces here, or most of them at least, are 4-sided all over the place. And that's what helps keep this as a nice smooth transition from one face to the next when it smooths it out. Some of these areas, if you had a quad or you had a triangle, you might get a little pinch right there. And obviously for a car, having a pinch like in the middle of the hood, it really throws off the whole look of the thing. It looks very fake and very CG. So our goal is to make it look as realistic as possible. All right, so that was the multi-cut. That is the insert edge loop. I don't think I want to show anything else from here. Nope, that's good. Here we've shown the bevel tool. Okay, so just grabbing edges or grabbing a face, we can go through and add a bevel. Very nicely right there. I'm going to show bridge in a second. I'm just making sure there's nothing else from here. I'm going to show. Nope, that's it. Okay. So the other tool I'm going to show is bridge, and bridge is a pretty nice tool. So let me show you if I was to model a chair for this room. Okay. So my first thing in modeling a chair or modeling any item is I always try to think ahead. Okay, you can't just like go into this and just start building something. You got to think ahead to what the design of the chair is. So I know that a chair is going to have 4 legs and it's probably going to have a back. Okay, otherwise it would just be a stool. So I need divisions for legs. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add divisions. So I'm going to add divisions like this. Oops, and divisions like that. So now you see that if I would look underneath, 1, 2, 3, 4 divisions right where those legs could be pulled out from, could be extruded from. Okay, so if I go to my edges and double click, come on, and shift double click, I can pull these out like this, and I'll double click this one, shift double click that one, pull it out. And I'm looking at these faces trying to decide how wide I want those boards or those posts to be coming down. So that looks fine. I can adjust it later if I need to. So I'm going to grab the face, here, 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 and here. That's good. I'm going to extrude. So I go to Edit Mesh, Extrude. I pull the blue arrow down. Okay, I bring it to about the floor. It doesn't have to hit exactly. And then I'm going to also adjust the offset. Okay, bigger, obviously it looks like that, and then narrower looks like that. And remember, I can use Control as a way to finer detail, use that offset. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty good. So now I need to pull the back up from this. And the back I probably want a little bit thicker than I did the legs. I don't like it to be lined up perfectly with the legs. So if I go to my edges and I grab those two and pull it, you see how I can just grab more room here to make these a little bit thicker. I can scale those in closer together. So now I'm going to go to face here, shift click this face, go to extrude, pull up the blue, wonderful. And then I can also add divisions. So another way to add divisions, instead of using the insert edge loop, is right on this extrude. So I'm going to plan ahead. I need one post for the top, a space, another post, a space, another post hitting the bottom. That's going to look weird, so I'm going to add another division. There we go. Post for the top, space, post, space, post. Okay, so that should be good there. Maybe I'll do a little offset That looks kind of neat. Okay. I could also switch to, now using this green arrow, you see how I can pull that back a little bit or pull it forward. Okay. If I grab it in the red, though, it's going to pull both sides, and I don't want that because I want to keep the chair symmetrical, and when I pull it off to the side, it's no longer symmetrical. So that should be good. I'm just going to nudge this back a bit. So now what I need to do is I need to connect, go away, this face and this face. So I need to connect these two faces together. So under Edit Mesh, there's this tool called Bridge. Okay, there's also under Mesh Tools, unless they moved it. They moved it. Ignore that last statement. It's right under here under Edit Mesh, there's Bridge. So I'm going to hit Bridge, and you'll see how it connects these two faces together. So just literally just like connects it. It's really, really neat. I could take the divisions down. So I think 3 is probably a good amount. I could also go through and if I try this, like taper is not doing anything and twist really isn't doing anything. Right now the options for this are set to linear, which means just straight, just A and B and just connect them. If I change this to blend and then I go with taper, I'm sorry, twist, you can see how it's twisting that shape. If I go with taper, I can make it bigger or make it smaller or tweak what I want that whole thing to look like. So it's really, really neat how we can play with this afterwards. So I'm going to go down to this one and grab those two faces and hit Bridge. Take my divisions down to 3, should be good. This one and that one, Edit Mesh, Bridge, take this down to 3. And then afterwards, I'm going to come in and say, oh, this wouldn't be very comfortable to sit on this. So I'm just going to grab the faces here and just push those in. And grab this middle edge, push that in. Okay. And maybe I want to take the vertices here and I'm going to pull these ones down a little bit. I'm going to grab these ones and pull it down a little bit. And I'm just going to grab this bottom row and pull that down. Or maybe I'll even grab the top of this and just scale it in a bit. Okay, so you see a lot of this is just point manipulation and then adding divisions where we need it. I'm just scaling these. I think it was a little bit too chunky. Oops. Go to wireframe, grab this. Alright, so back to object mode, there it is. Okay. Now, if I hit 3 on here, you can see we get this like rounded chair that actually looks like a more cushiony chair, but then our legs are really pointy. There's no divisions on the bottom, so our legs just turn into these pointy parts. So I'm going to use the same bevelly trick, grab all my edges, go to use constraints. Come on. 88 and 92, sure. Current, activate, reset. I like to just verify that everything's good. You see that it did grab some extra ones here, but it didn't grab these. So I'm just going to shift double click because those ones were kind of like in the not exactly at 90 degrees. So that's why I didn't grab them. I probably could just widen that scope a little bit. I think I'm going to do that. Let me just widen that area. Edit mesh. So current, let's take the angle to maybe 70 and 130. Oh, activate it. There we go. All right, now I think I grabbed everything that time. Reset it, and then go back to my bevel. Take my segments to 2, take my fraction down, 0.2. Now 0.5 I guess was good. All right, so back to object mode. So now I hit 3. Oops. Now see, it didn't grab the very bottom. But that's why it's important to be able to do this kind of stuff so that we can easily go back and grab them. Back to bevel. Back to 2 divisions here. There we go. Alright, so that should be good. And I don't even need to smooth this out, I just leave it like that. Now if I decide later on, like, hey, this chair is really tall, like if I slid this under my desk, it seems like it's fitting there fine, but this looks really thin and the legs look really tall. So I may want to adjust that. So using my other views, I can grab my vertices for this bottom piece and just pull it down. That gives that chair base a little bit more thickness right there. Okay, I could also use my insert edge loops and drop one here, drop one there, and then just grab these front divisions and pull that down, and now the seat has a little bit of rounding to it. Okay, so there's lots of different shapes you can use or create based on just what we went over. So here's a quick way to make like a cup, just so you can see how to make a cup really quick. I'm going to grab the stuff in the top of this. So I went inside to grab those faces a little bit easier. I'm going to extrude it. I'm going to change the offset down. There we go. I'm going to too big. There we go. I'm going to extrude it again. I'm going to push it down. And for some reason, it's showing me a face on top. I think I went too far. I'm going to undo it. There we go. There we go. So I have this. I'm going to extrude, offset, 0.05, 0.1. There we go. Extrude again. There we go. So I did something wrong the first time, and I may have offset it too far, and it like went inside or went reversed, and that will cause issues. All right, so now I have a cup like that, and I could add pencils to the cup. I could add a beverage to the cup or whatever. I could also use my edge loops. I'm going to add multiple ones right along this edge, and I want to add a handle to the cup, so I'm going to go to this face and that face. That's good. And I'm going to go to Edit Mesh Bridge. You'll see it gets this flat face because it's on linear. Remember, it goes straight. So if I do blend, now I have a cup handle. Or if I change this to curve and add more divisions, nope, I'll just leave it on blend. There we go. Blend works. Curve does something else. I have to set some more options in order for that to work. I can't just click it here, but that'll work. So now I can go through and tweak what this handle looks like by grabbing the vertices and maybe pushing this way and grabbing these and pulling them up a little bit, pulling this down a little bit, or whatever. Okay? So what I want you to do now for the rest of the class is just play. Just look at some objects and just try to recreate it. Stuff like lamps, stuff like this, stuff like, I think I showed picture frames before, maybe there's other class, so whatever. Very easy. Look at this picture frame or a computer screen. I can grab this face. I can go to extrude. I can change my offset. Come on. Like that. I can extrude again, push it in, and now I have either a picture frame or I have a computer screen. And I could use this as either. I can just put this right here on my desk. And if I pay attention to this stuff too, if I scale it like this, you can see how this is thicker and that's thinner. So you typically don't want to scale things like that. You want to grab the vertices and just move them. So now I have a widescreen computer screen, or I have a portrait picture, or whatever. Okay, if I want to create something that it could be holding the computer up, obviously, I can create something like this, add some divisions in the height, and just grab, I'm just going to grab 2 of these. These 2. And I could extrude those out, pull it out like this, scale it down, and then just stick it and scale it behind the computer. Oops. There we go. So now it looks like that's the stand for the computer. Okay, obviously it's really chunky. Just thin that out a little bit. Okay, so go in the software, play with it, save your work often. Okay, when we come in next class, we're going to be working on texturing and lighting our stuff. All right.